I'll be honest, I'm not a huge fan of this tree. I mean, this is right on that thick shelf. I mean, under this bush it's all scraped up, but I've only got this trail coming this way, right here, and the only shot is right underneath me. It's I don't know about this. Sons of the Hunt Podcast, episode number 11, second installment of 2. It would probably be useful if you go back and watch the first one. It'll make more sense.
Absolutely.
But, yeah, this is just pretty much the follow-up. I could probably wrap it up kind of quick. This is what's going on right now. This is just a little, cutscene I had, some B-roll footage. In the first installment, I pretty much just explained that I was hunting a new piece of property. I planted a food plot. It was kind of the follow-up to Ghost. It was an attempt to kind of increase my odds for harvesting a deer that showed up, I think it was like November 23rd, and it was a deer worth hunting.
Right.
So this is kind of just the continuation of that. Kind of, I don't know, just my lumbering around the food plot here. But I have, these were some bucks that were hanging around in the area. I actually never ended up seeing any of these deer in the woods. I don't know what happened once they rubbed their velvet, but...
It kind of happens, you get a bunch of deer kind of hanging around the area, you get them all on trail camera, and then they disappear. I mean, yeah. I've had that 100 times, man.
Yep, and that was one that I actually had hard horned on trail camera, and I have no idea what happened to him.
Right.
Never saw him again.
Yeah, you get them on film every once in a while, and all of a sudden a deer shows up that you've never had a picture of, and all of a sudden,
which is exactly what ends up happening here. And this is just kind of the intro to the story of the 2015 season. I know you saw the logo MMXV, which was a logo designed by my buddy Brian Filarski that was going to be a short film, and we turned it into this.
Yeah.
So that logo was too cool to not use.
Oh, absolutely.
So,
I love it. It's a cool way of, saying it's a 2015 season, you know what I mean?
But what's going on here, this is the shelf that I had the pictures of that nice deer from Ghost.
From Ghost, right.
And this was the only tree on that shelf that I could pretty much hunt out of. And the shot was straight down, as I was talking about in that first clip, that intro clip. And this is actually a little bit out of the sequence of the timeline of how this film goes. This is later in the season. We're looking at the end of October.
Right.
This might actually even be in November. And I hadn't planned on shooting a doe that day. But the opportunity, presented itself, and I actually had to be to work by like 11:30. We were pouring concrete that day, and the way this played out, it was one of those things I had to tag, and it was you don't get mature doe like this walking right under your stand every day, so it was a good opportunity. I don't pass up easy venison.
And that's it. Like, and you said even in the last podcast about how a lot of things that trigger you to harvest is situational.
Right.
Right. So they come in the right spot. They present that perfect opportunity. It's hard to pass that up.
Yeah. And the other thing that made me super inquisitive about this was the whole angle of the shot, which is something that was a concern to me right at the beginning. And this is essentially straight down. Yeah. Like I said, I wish I could figure out the angle of it, but I mean, it is about as close to 90 degrees as I think.
Yeah, it's pretty steep. I mean, you had the camera mounted on your bow. It's pretty much you skylined against the blue sky, so it's a pretty straight up and down shot.
But
yeah, that's a real tricky shot too. Especially, you look at a 40-yard shot versus a 1-yard shot. There's the difficulty levels are pretty equal there. Right. A lot of people think you're just going to line up your 20-yard and let it rip, but that's not really the case.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people have that tendency to just take all their pins and just, okay, as long as it's all brown on the pins, then I'm good. But like I said earlier, I tend to use my 30-yard pin in that situation. So, like I said, that was a little bit out of sequence just because that was later. So the story that is going to unfold now was already going on.
Right. It had already happened previous to this clip.
So just to bring us back to the last episode, that was October 15th that I passed up it's like a 2.5-year-old 9-pointer in the food plot. First night that I sat there. So 2 days later, October 17th, it's a Saturday, and we had a cold front moving in. So what I chose to do was sit at the top of the mountain. Because in the morning, you sit higher up in an elevation for rising thermals.
That's it. You got a front coming in like that, man. It's going to wreak havoc on your wind directions, and it can really cause a swirl. So, yeah, by hunting the top property, or top piece, would probably be a good idea.
And the whole reason that I put a food plot in was unfolding.
Yeah, how about that?
In front of an empty tree stand. And, it's you look back on it, and this is the kind of thing that will drive you crazy.
Sure.
This is, trail cams are a blessing and a curse.
I know, right?
But, it's in a situation like this, it's hard to describe if you're angry and regretful for not sitting in the stand or, who knows what the wind was like down. That food plot stand was tricky because of it the way it kind of sat at the bottom of a ravine.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, it could have been a completely different result if you were sitting in that stand. I mean, you might have educated that deer.
He might be there because I'm not there.
Right, right.
Like I said, that you always have to consider why something didn't happen.
No, you're absolutely right. You can't get hung up on it too much. I mean, because if you have one stand you're hunting out of, well, then it's easy decision, But if you've got multiple stands, I mean, you're always going to, especially if you're having a slow sit, start thinking maybe I should have sat on the other part by the apple tree or what have you. And, you always have that seed of doubt,
Right. And for the people who are listening, I should probably describe what we're talking about.
Yeah, not a bad idea.
So I chose to sit at the top of the mountain, and down in the food plot, I had probably a 130-inch 9-pointer.
Indeed.
Rubbing a tree, working a scrape. He just hung around for probably 10 minutes in the exact same spot that little 9-pointer worked.
Right, and from the last episode there.
Yeah, this was the reason that I put this camera on video right here, was I was planning on putting an arrow through a deer working that spot.
Right.
That corner was just, I could tell. I have videos from when I was putting the food plot in explaining that corner was going to be an important piece of the puzzle, just because of all the rubs right next to each other. You could tell the ground was scraped up. I called it as cliche as it sounds, like the hot corner, which is essentially what it was. I mean, I just had so many pictures of buck hitting those scrapes, rubbing those trees. It was just nonstop. It was just a hub. But I was fortunate enough to record my reaction. I'm amazed right now. I got a great video of him rubbing a tree. Wow. It just, my heart's like beating through my chest right now. This is unbelievable. Now I gotta figure out when to hunt this deer again. The day after.
That's about right. Yeah.
Sunday,
biting your knuckle. Yeah.
So on Sunday, I obviously, ran to that trail camera because I had to see, and sure enough,
that's what you found.
It's exactly what happened, and it's.
Yeah, that comes back around to, are they a blessing or a curse? I mean, they're more a blessing than anything. I mean, trail cameras are a great tool when you need them. You know what I mean? Like you said it before, some of the other properties you don't really have a lot of cameras out, but you've been on the property a number of times. You get it. You understand, where the travel routes are. You've already got stands hung. The work is pretty much done on those properties. The property I'm hunting over the hill here, it's trickier because I hunted in the past, but things change. So, I'm just trying to figure out the travel routes again. I mean, you can walk through and find deer trails everywhere, but where's the highest concentration of deer?
Right.
And that's what I'm really using them for. I mean, I'm not, I used to leave a trail camera there for months. Now I'm leaving them for 3 weeks and moving them.
Yep.
I'm just trying to find a concentration to where I can narrow down a spot to, put a couple doe in the freezer, and maybe while I'm out there hunting, that's when I can do a little recon.
Yeah. And
see if I see, bucks in the area. Maybe I'll luck out and one will just walk underneath me. I'd rather be lucky than good, as they say, but
yeah. Well, I mean, we had that discussion earlier, I think before we turned the microphones on at, 12 o'clock at night, which is what we did. But yeah, I've got, this property that we're currently talking about where I don't really put cameras in. I probably should. It's a huge piece, but from the couple years that I've had cameras there, I know where I have to be.
Right.
I know where the buck are going to run during the rut, and I know where the doe hang out, and it's kind of easy. Just because and actually because it is so big, it's easier to narrow down the spots where the deer hang out.
Right.
As backwards as that kind of sounds.
No, I know what you mean. It's where I'm at over the hill here. I think I've got just under 90 acres. I have a friend of mine who's got 160 that we hunt on, and that's a much bigger piece, and it's really tough to peg them. But we've been doing a lot more work on that property in regard to adding bedding and giving them cover and giving them stuff like that, because the food is there.
Try to keep them local.
That's it.
Yeah.
The food's there, but that's only good for right at first light or last light, because they're bedding elsewhere, coming to the food or leaving the food. So, now it's getting a little bit easier to peg them down because they're staying on that property. So it's not taking them as long to get to where you think they're going to be. You know? So,
and that's kind of the way that, I'm looking at trail cameras now. It's just, they're a better tool for, like you said, pegging them down.
Right.
I don't need to have them on properties that I know what's going on, like that one farm that I hunt all the time. I don't need to put a camera there.
Right.
If anything, it's more just to get content, just to get a picture of a nice buck.
Sure.
I'll put it there during the rut. I don't need to put them there now. What I'm doing now is pretty much keeping all the cameras behind my house and trying to figure out this new piece of property. So, and this is actually a more systematic, I guess, use of trail cameras, because I'm doing process of elimination on each trail, trying to figure out which one they're going to come through, because it's a pinch point, but it's kind of a wider, it's more of a travel corridor
sure,
rather than a pinch point. So just trying to nail down where they move through, like we were talking about earlier, where you've got that one area that deer walk through, but they don't walk through it in any sort of pattern,
organized fashion. Yeah, it's an open area where they'll pass through. So to try and hang an archery stand there is tricky. I mean, you want to hunt rifle there, perfect, because you know they're coming off from all different angles. But you got to really narrow it down based on your strategy. So yeah, no, I know exactly what you mean. The whole when you're done, when the nail's in the wood, you put the hammer away. It's kind of the same kind of analogy for it.
Yeah.
But
exactly.
When you're trying to find a concentration of deer, that's when they become a really valid tool.
Right.
Unless some people collect baseball cards, other people collect pictures of deer. So if it's a hobby for you, man, knock your socks out, put them out all over the place, and leave them there. But if you're if it's a different objective, like trying to find a higher concentration of deer, well, I'm moving the cameras around. I'm trying to find where they're. I mean, I've got a lot of pictures of deer, but you get a family group here and there, and there might be 2 days where you don't see anything in that area. So I'm moving them around to where I see something on the daily. So
I'm real good at figuring out where they're not.
Yeah. No, likewise.
But anyway, so after I got this footage of this deer essentially taunting me, I as anyone would, I kind of became enamored, and I just said, all right, well, I got to concentrate on this. He seems really killable based on the information that he gave me there. I mean, it was October 17th. It was the middle of the month. Middle of October. The quote-unquote October lull.
Yeah.
It was on the front end of a cold front. It was 41 degrees. It wasn't super cold.
Mm-hmm.
And he was on his feet, quote-unquote feet,
right,
at 9:30 in the morning.
Yeah, that goes against everything that is normal with deer hunting.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So, and that's it. You're lucky to get it sometimes.
He got away with one there, and I thought, all right, well, I got to get back in this area because there's got to be something going on, maybe an early doe or something like that. So I got back there on the 19th. It was a good cold day, and that's when this happened. And for the people on the podcast, this is how do you even explain this? This is a deer that I should have shot.
Right.
Looking back now and thinking about what I originally set out to do, this was the deer that was placed in my lap.
Sure. Well, there's two schools of thought with this. There's a lot of people that are going to look at that and go, man, I shot that deer all day.
Yeah.
And other people are going to look at it and go, no, I understand. Now, there was a bit of an occurrence that happened right when this...
Before this.
Right,
correct.
before that deer came out, right?
So right here, he's out of breath. You could actually see the steam coming out of his nose. You could see his chest expanding. He just got done fighting with another buck, and I believe that other buck was the one on the camera.
Right.
I never got a good look at him, but, I mean, this is a mature deer.
All day.
His antlers might not say it, and, I just sat there in my normal state of indecision, which is pretty much where I live, and I just, I hesitated. And looking back, you won't. The point is to kill a mature deer most of the time. That's kind of the place that I'm at in my hunting career. I want to kill. as mature deer as possible.
Sure.
The most mature deer that could present itself is the one you should take. And in a way, it feels irresponsible that I didn't. Do you know?
Well, the fact that you heard those two deer fighting up on the hill, and you had a really good suspicion that it was the deer you were after.
Yeah.
I mean, that plays a huge factor in the decision that you made.
Right.
So,
right.
I mean, I get it. I mean, you could definitely tell that deer was making good use of the food plot you put up there.
Yeah.
I mean, he had a gut on him for sure.
He looked like a sausage.
Yeah.
But
if you're thinking that maybe this other one's going to come back down that field and chase him off, well, then you're going to get a shot at the deer that you kind of that was your goal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean, for that season. So, yeah, I mean, I don't think it was a poor decision by any means. I know what you're saying. When you have something like that fall in your lap, it's hard to let that go. But
yeah, it was, it had its pros and cons. I mean, it was a 38-yard shot. I knew I had ranged that juncture in those two trails.
Sure.
And that was about 30, 40, somewhere right in there. I mean, I know I could have made that shot.
Right.
And the way he was,
it's kind of lethargic.
he was exhausted at that
Yeah.
point. I don't think he would have even jumped.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
But,
I mean,
shoulda, woulda, coulda. I mean,
and that's it, and just like earlier in the sequence when you shot the doe, you weren't planning on shooting a doe that day.
Right.
But the situation arose and it triggered something in you to say, I'm going to shoot this doe.
Yeah.
So, long story short, nothing triggered you there. So that's probably not a bad thing. You know what I mean?
And honestly, you know what? If that buck were working that scrape in front of me and I had more time and I thought about it, it might have been different because
May have prevented a different situation for you.
You could see my reaction right here. This is right after it happened because I thought I had the GoPro on while he was in front of me and I didn't. And then I turned it on. And you could see that I'm still kind of indecisive.
Sure.
Like I think I said I don't know what just happened.
Yeah, well, rightfully so, because, I mean, it was a good deer.
Yeah.
It's a hard one to pass up. But again, a lot of factors played into the decision that you made.
Yeah.
So, I don't fault you.
And it's one of those things where you look back and you think about it and you can't progress if you don't make mistakes. And I don't even want to consider it a mistake. I'll just call it a learning experience.
Sure.
I mean, that's that intangible experience. And it's
absolutely.
It's extremely hard to describe it. It's all situational and it's all about how your body reacts and if it's going to work.
Sure.
And I guess I made the decision there that it wasn't going to work or it wasn't right.
Right. That whole sequence that played out is going to have an impact on a future decision, no doubt. And that's just kind of how you have to take it. You know what I mean? There's going to be times where you go, man, I shouldn't have done that. You know what I mean? And then another situation is going to come up and you're not going to do it.
Yeah.
Or, man, I let that one slide, man. I'm probably kicking myself for not doing that. And then you get presented with another opportunity, sometimes within moments of the first one.
Right.
And you're like, I'm not letting this one slide.
Right.
I'm not going to pass up on this opportunity. So, everything that we do in the woods, it plays a factor into how we grow and how we grow not only as sportsmen and hunters, but how we grow as people.
True.
You didn't shoot that deer. Maybe you should have. Well, you're looking for a car. Man, I'm not passing this deal up. You know what I mean? And even though it's something completely polar opposite, it's that learning experience that kind of plays into. Yeah, exactly. It plays into your everyday life. Like I'm going to put a bid on this house, or I'm not gonna sleep on this job that was offered to me. Anything like that. So, in the grander scheme of things. Some of the things that we learn in the woods can translate into our everyday life and help us make better decisions that way. I mean, in my case, it's with parenting. I mean, I see a lot of parallels with how I treat my kids and how I conduct myself in the outdoors. So
it could definitely make a positive impact on decision making.
Absolutely, 100%, because you're going to make enough wrong ones. That's for sure. You spend enough time in the woods, you're going to make wrong decisions.
And if you're going to make a wrong decision, it might as well be there
Sure. And that's where you have a good opportunity to learn from it. I know it's been said a million times, but the first time I heard it, it really made an impact on me. Is if you don't learn from your mistakes, they weren't worth making.
Right.
And that kind of echoes through the whole topic. You know what I mean? If you don't learn from the mistake that you just made, it wasn't worth making.
Yeah.
I've made poor shots on animals where, it had such a huge impact on me that, I really think long and hard before I even draw my bow on an animal anymore, because of that instance. And that instance may have saved me from making a poor shot, or have making me make a poor decision in my finances, or make it, however you want to look at it.
Right.
But it's I don't want to get off on too much of a tangent on that, but that's just, that's the reality of it.
Yep. But that happened pretty much immediately the next time I was able to hunt that food plot, which it was clearly still hot, for lack of a better term.
Right.
So I knew that the deer were still in the area, and after that, I think that probably one of the factors, like you said, that contributed to that decision was I thought that other deer was in the area.
Right.
And without a doubt, it wasn't the deer that, was painted in my mind. I'm still thinking about him in front of me working that rub.
Right.
And
well, that's it. It just didn't click. You know what I mean?
Right.
And you did have a bit of an advantage in your favor, because I'll tell you, there's very few things that get me excited more than a weather front that's coming in.
Yeah.
Whenever I see that, man, I'm like, should I call off of work? I got some sick days in my bank.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I start really getting the gears going. Like, we got a cold front coming in. I want to be in a tree, because I've seen so many cool things come from a cold front coming in or moving out or whatever. That sway in barometric pressure, that really has a huge impact, and it can create an extraordinary opportunity.
Yeah,
for
that was rising mercury. It was 29 inches and rising in that. Honestly, that Browning trail camera I have is unbelievable.
That is pretty cool. I was looking at that earlier when we were looking at some footage. I was like, man, that's an awful lot of data you got streamed across the bottom of that image.
It's so strange, though, and I will say this. I bought 2 more Brownings after that one because of that footage is just stellar.
It really is good.
Full 1080p, unbelievable. And I bought 2, I think there was a deal on Amazon that was supposed to be the same camera, and they just don't have the same quality footage. I don't know what happened, but that one camera is by far my favorite camera.
Yeah.
So I will recommend that. But anyway, getting off on another tangent. So essentially how the rest of that season played out, because of that footage from that trail camera, was me kind of jockeying back and forth between the top of the mountain and the bottom of the mountain, the food plot, because I knew at one point that shelf where all those rubs were from Ghost, that was going to heat up again. Yeah. Because that's clearly a breeding ground up there.
Right.
So, I spent a lot of time up there, and honestly, I never laid eyes on a really mature deer up there. I know from the trail camera footage I got that they were up there.
Right.
But I personally never saw one. I had opportunities at some younger deer. There was a pretty decent, like 6-pointer, maybe like 16 inches. And then there was like another like 5-pointer. And I think that 9-pointer that I passed up, he ended up on top of the mountain. And eventually that deer ended up on top of the mountain again. I ended up hunting rifle season up there, and I almost shot a buck the first day with the bow, but I was wearing boot blankets on my feet because it was freezing, and I tried to maneuver in the stand, and I ended up having an opportunity to shoot him in the neck with the rifle after he bounced back about 50 yards, and I passed it up. I don't think that he was more than 2.5, and
right. But, to harvest a buck with your bow during rifle season is kind of a cool thing. I've only hunted rifle season a few times with my bow, mainly out of opportunity.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because I hunt some properties where you can't bring a rifle on that property. There's the landowners aren't cool with it. So you got to hunt archery.
Yeah.
But doesn't mean you can't archery hunt during rifle season.
True.
You still have to wear your orange and you have to apply. I mean, you
yeah.
can't go shooting a doe because obviously reasons you have to follow the season guidelines that the rifle season puts forth. But, it's just kind of a cool situation to make a bit of a compromise, to shoot a buck during rifle season with your bow. I'd probably do the same thing.
I was so close too. That was the real deal, that encounter, because he wasn't bumped from anywhere yet.
Right.
And there were a couple doe in the area, and I grunted at him, and he responded. He was coming in. He was 45 yards behind some brush, and that's when I was starting to move around to get the camera. I never even got the camera on him, and he heard the boot blankets just
pros and cons, man. Pros and cons.
Yep.
Yeah, they keep your feet warm, but yeah, they're a little bulky.
And I mean, I have footage of that deer. Obviously, though, he was kind of hanging around there, but yeah, that's kind of how the season played out, and I ended up kind of watching the sunset on that season there, and that was it. And it was all kind of. You look back, and I feel like I was just kind of chasing, trail camera pictures, essentially.
Sure.
And it's, I don't know if it was worth it. I don't know if I was making the right decisions, or if I was just trying to make them, based on footage, or if where I was making mistakes. But I mean, that's essentially what it came down to, just chasing one deer back and forth. And
I'm not much of a betting man, but I'm willing to wager that a lot of those decisions that you made in the 2015 season translated into the 2016 season.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier about, learning from the, and again, we're not really using the term mistake, learning from the decisions you make.
Right.
And whether you feel they were the correct decisions or not. You learn from that, and it influences the way you react to the very next scenario that kind of pops up your way.
Right. Yeah, and the 2016 season, which will probably be chronicled in the next installment here, that's when a really good storyline opens up. And, I'm excited to start telling that one. I mean, the way this season played out, I look back on it, and I'm looking through all the footage, and it's so vivid. And it just brings me right back into archery season. I remember just foaming at the mouth, like, this is the day. I know it. I know he's going to come by. Today is the day. And
I have that conversation with myself a dozen times this season. This is the day. I know it. I can feel it in my bones,
And you look back on it, and I think about all the lackluster. I've got so much footage of just super windy, just gray days where I'm sitting there and wondering what I'm doing, and I don't know.
And that's it. When you single those scenarios out, you know what I mean? It's a whole lot different than when you compound all those scenarios from an entire season together. Because when you look at it that way, it doesn't feel like an unsuccessful season, because you compound all those experiences, all those wet days, those cold days, all the things that you've experienced, and you put them all together into one, seasonal experience. You're like, okay, so this is what I'm going to do.
On the next installment of 2.
Twist and turn.